Doors shut in 1967, I think. So the ground actually shut down in 67 when Third Lanark went bust. And it was used off and on. I think the council, what happened was the ground was then sold for housing. They realised there was a caveat in the council to say that it could never be built on. It must remain a playing field, which is great. So that's why to this day we've still got the park. But I think the council and then some schools used it. I know it was used for a schools final after that in the 70s and things as well. So the ground was continually used. I mean, the football has been played here since 1884. So we've got 126 years of unbroken football history, even when the ground was shut. And of course then kids would break in and play football there every day as well. But there was a few finals, a few games. A lot of clubs like Rangers Boys Club and Celtic Boys Club trained here as well. So it was always used. But slowly over the years it's been vandalised and abandoned. Just behind me we are in the east section of the terracing here, where just to my right would have been a pavilion building which Third Lanark brought from the original Cathkin Park just 2 streets away. And a stand as well that they rebuilt in the early 60s. They put a new stand up. These were, of course, burnt out in the 1970s, and by the 1980s they were falling apart. So it was all gone, I think, by about 1980, 81. Behind me you see lots of trees as well. There's 5 main sections of terracing left all around the ground. One, if you've not been here before, one complete empty side where the stand and the pavilion used to be. But where the trees are now is not terracing. It was actually landscaped, and I met a guy whose uncle landscaped the ground. They're now 150 foot high and out of control. But originally they were seedlings, and I've got a great picture of when that was first all planted, and the trees are tiny. So the trees you see now at 150 feet were that size, and they were seedlings. And they were then used in public parks and streets as well. So some of the streets, where you live will have trees from Cathkin Park. And part of my reason for getting involved was I was wanting to do football tours. So obviously football in Scotland started here. A bunch of Highlanders that became Queen's Park were over in Queen's Park Rec, which is there. It's great to think. In 1867 they were tossing the caber across the road. Saw this new game football. Football obviously develops from there, from a corner of Queen's Park Rec, now where the new hospital is. Queen's Park obviously organised, they become the first football club. 1872 is the first international over at Hamilton Crescent, because there isn't a football ground. The biggest, involved sport at the time was cricket, which now has become an elitist sport. At the time it was all cricket grounds. So obviously Hamilton Crescent, home of West of Scotland, held the first Queen's Park stroke SFA game against England. Third Lanark obviously grew from there as well. Third Lanark were formed by 5 guys who were at the game, who then went to the orderly rooms in Howard Street, formed the Third Lanark Football Club from the Third Lanarkshire Rifle Volunteers. They were looking for a ground. They enclosed a ground at Victoria Road and then moved to First Cathkin. But the story with this ground starts with Queen's Park, who then moved to the bowling ground, the bowling club across the road, which, if you still look at it, still looks like a football ground. At Queen's Park then, when they built this ground, they were going to build the train company was coming through, it was Cathkin District Railway, I think, were going to come through, and they said, look, we're going to cut through your land, you need to move. We'll pay to have the room across the road levelled, built into the hill, and build the ground there. And that's what Queen's Park did. So in 1884, in October 1884, this ground opened. And it's not as it was just now. The pitch was actually about 30 yards over from where it is just now. This natural amphitheatre-like hill wasn't cut into. Instead, they brought their stand and pavilion building from across the road to here. So it's a great tradition of moving buildings around between these 2 and 3 grounds. When they moved out in 1903, they fell out with Third Lanark, who had agreed to move in, smashed all the terracing down, and this, as you see here, was built in 1903. So that's the sort of potted history of the way the ground is now. And it was one of the best stadiums in Britain. It was one of the first proper all-ticket grounds in British football. And it's very important to the way British football was then played. If we look at something like Hampden 1 across the road, this is where the passing game, you wouldn't have Barcelona to this day without tiki-taki, without the passing game that was invented there, simply because the Scottish guys were small. And they're playing against huge rugby-playing public school Englishmen. They went off and passed the ball to the side. This passing game changes the whole thing from 118 to 226 and passing football. So they're vitally important grounds simply for that, Part of it was my great-grandfather played here. He scored a hat-trick in his debut for Third Lanark in 1915, 1916, and scored over 50 goals for them, played 4 seasons here, and it was obviously a magical place for him as well. I'd been in London, I didn't even know the ground was here. I was a West End boy, I moved to the south side, I was out for a run, I came around here and suddenly found this famous Cathkin Park was still here, and I was amazed at how much was still in situ still remained. So I started just doing a bit of gentle restoration of it just because it was crumbling. If you look at something like the wall, the moss in the walls was crumbling the walls. So I started doing restoration, got invited, met some Third Lanark guys, did some press with them, got invited onto the board and ended up buying the original name. But I'm no longer involved with them as well. They've got different guys running it. And part of the big thing was to get Cathkin used again for Third Lanark, and that was a dream to get them back here. But obviously this would cost millions. And when you look at it, it's been a public park for 50 years, so I doubt it would ever be a professional football ground again. But again, I came back with this idea to do football tours, to take them to Queen's Park Rec, Hampden Bowling Club, across here. This is a football tour where you can actually get on the pitch. You can score a goal in these famous old goals that have been here since 1884. And part of the council's problem with that was that the terracing wasn't safe to walk down. So I thought, well, I'm going to go back and clear. So I cleared one section down in the West End and then the next section. And then we managed to get a bit of council help with the Jimmy Johnson Academy, our registered charity. They managed to get the community payback guys in. The community payback guys come in and help scrape us down and kick up the leaves and do a bit of sort of gentle restoration as well. But it's kind of addictive. This place gives you Cathkin madness. So every bit of spare time I've got, I'm an actor anyway, so I've got plenty of spare time. But any spare time I've got, I come down and I do a little bit of work. But it's starting now to really come together. Obviously you're fighting nature. But that was part of it. It's part of it. It's a family thing for me. It's a big, big family connection for me. I'm huge on family history. And some of the players that played here, the connections to every club and every footballer you've ever heard of is here. For me, if this was in Greece, this would be a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's one of these places. It's in an unfashionable part of Glasgow. It's the back of, it's the back of Govan Hill and before Tory Glen. It's not a loved place except by those who use this park. This park is just the most magical place for everyone who lives around here. What I've always thought was missing here was there's nothing to take away. There's nowhere to have a coffee. There's nowhere to go to the toilet here. It's even for the dog walkers, there's nothing for them. But if you're a ground hopper, if you're interested in sports grounds, not just football, rugby, cycling, athletics, boxing, this was a multi-sports venue with unbelievable heritage. Same heritage as Third Hampden up the road. But there's nothing to take away from it, there's nothing tangible. So part of my plan, working with the Jimmy Johnson guys as well, working with the council hopefully as well, is to make some sort of lasting memorial here, restore what's left. Even if we can never get the trees down and never get it looking like it was, we can fix up what's here. We can get the running track down so the community can use it again for athletics and just for running on. You break your ankles if you go on it just now. But I'm taking it down just another couple of inches as well, just levelling it all out. Little bits, little bits, little bits. Is starting to pay off here as well. Obviously you're fighting nature and that's part of it as well. It's part of our re-education part here. This is an unbelievable local asset. And even if it is like this forever, I'd be happy because it's still here. And that's the most important thing to me, that Cathkin Park remains. There's 2 or 3 bits of terracing that are still really good, but this is what happens. Nature eventually will come and destroy this. So why not just restore it a little bit at a time? And it works. So part of what we're doing is try to raise funds now. Not obviously we're a limited company, so I started a production company called Cathkin Park Limited because I'm a lover of Cathkin Park and because this is what I was doing. But if we can make drama, make documentaries, TV dramas, films, and live shows, it brings a bit of life and interest again. It puts Cathkin Park's name out there in every poster we do, and also raise funds for this because this is going to be expensive. But even if you do it bit by bit. Slowly but surely what I've found is the best way to do this place is just little bits at a time. And it's creating a huge interest again as well. I've got a great following on Twitter, I've got a great following on the blog as well, lots and lots of good wishes for that. So turning that into cash is different. So we'd rather raise it ourselves, then go back to the council and go, well, this is what can be done. Let's make this a legacy project for the 2020 Euro finals. Let's make this, every time we get a Commonwealth Games rent in here, why isn't this the legacy? My main goal with this project is to provide a lasting legacy. It's going to way outlive my life anyway as well. I mean, I've given myself 7 years to get this place turned around and we're 1 year into it already and we made a big improvement. But obviously I'm busy and things as well, so and I can't get loads of volunteers down until we get permission. So it all depends on lots more sort of variables. But ideally what we'd like, and I'm working with Jimmy Johnson guys on this, is a museum here. This should be a living, breathing football museum. A museum where you don't just walk around things in cases, where you see old medals and things. Things are tangible. You can touch, you can run around the track, you can get on the pitch, you can score a goal, we'll put nets up, score a goal there. But there has to be something for the local community to take away. There has to be a cafe here. That's what I would like. I would like, obviously, an extension to the SFA museum, which is brilliant. I've been to every museum, football museum in Europe. That one up there is still the best. I would like an extension to that. There's so many more things that they can't display. Wouldn't that be great here? Wouldn't that be great to have a football museum all the way down here, or a sports museum? But in the meantime, what we're looking at doing is getting, like, if you see behind me, we've got big storage containers where the goals and things are kept in. We're maybe looking at something like that opens out into an office, that could be a reception area for people to come to the ground. I'm working on a couple of pamphlets and books to print up as well, so there's something tangible for groundhoppers and those that are interested in the ground to take away. And then you realise some of the boxers that fought here. Benny Lynch fought 5 fights here. It's one of the reasons why Benny was one of the first stories we came up with as a show. Where's the legacy for that? All of these things could be pulled in here. There was, Willie Maley and the O'Neill brothers, Harry O'Neill, the McNeill brothers that formed Rangers. It was all from here. They all performed here. They all did athletics meets here. They were in the regiment here as well, 3rd Lancashire Rifle Volunteers. The legacy and history that you could pull together of Glasgow social history, of this area as alone as well, because Govanhill's forgotten about. So this area has a great, especially through the industrial age, a great history, a fascinating history for those that have moved here now. There's nowhere to show that. This is a museum of sort of social history, of the regiment that was here as well, of the sports and sort of social inclusion there was here. This was the people's club. When it was 3rd Lanark, they were the soldiers. Queen's Park was seen as the professors, obviously. It was more of an aristocratic kind of gentleman's club that way. This was the people's club. This was where the Jewish community came to watch as well. That was their team. So when 3rd Lanark died in 1967, a lot of people were lost to football, a lot of people were lost to sport, but unless it's constantly kept in the forefront of people's minds and they see actually tangible things happening here, then I think there will be a legacy, and I think having the museum here is my dream.